Here we go. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are from Bird Conservancy of the Rockies, and I have some incredible ladies joining me today, and we're going to learn about all of the amazing career opportunities that we have in the field of conservation. So a little bit about Bird Conservancy, if you have not heard of us before. We are a nonprofit conservation organization. Our headquarters are in Brighton, Colorado, out at Bar Lake State Park. But we also have a satellite office up in Fort Collins, and we have folks that work for us all throughout the Rocky Mountain region. So we are a pretty small organization, but we have a really wide reach, which is really, really cool. So our job at Bird Conservancy is to help conserve birds and their habitats, the places where they live. And we do that by working in 3 different teams and kind of taking this multi-pronged approach to helping conserve habitats. And so we have our science team. They are the ones doing that boots on the ground research. They're monitoring bird populations and gathering really, really useful, interesting data. We have our stewardship team. They are working with private landowners such as farmers and ranchers to help them implement conservation practices on their land to not only benefit the birds and wildlife, but their ranches and their farms as well. And then we have our education team, which I am a part of, and it's our job to help people learn about birds and learn why they are so cool and why we should care about them. So on our panel today, we have myself. My name is Sarah Doxson. I am our early childhood and family programs coordinator. Like I mentioned, I'm on our education team. And we have some fun intro questions here. So one of them is, what bird best fits your personality? And mine, today I'm going to say a hummingbird fits mine, because today I feel like I've been running around and really busy and had lots of energy. That's not true every day, but today I really identify with a hummingbird. And then what my job means, that's kind of a long, wordy title. So I get to plan programs and then implement those programs with young kids, so ages 2 to 3, and their families. I also get to help lead school groups for school kids ages, kindergarten through high school. Pretty much anyone who wants to learn about birds, we will help them learn about birds. So that is me. Stacy, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Stacy Monahan. I am the Camp and Family Programs Coordinator. Also a nice long title we like here. But what that means is I get to run all of our camp programs and help develop and organize all of our educational family programs here at the Bird Conservancy during the year. Right now, I would call myself a black-capped chickadee. I grew up over in New Hampshire, and they're fun, flitty little birds that stay all year round. You especially see them, they stay for the winter. So right now we just got a big snowstorm, and I'm very happy seeing our chickadees twiddling around out there.
Excellent. Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily Chavez. I'm a private lands wildlife biologist for the Bird Conservancy of the Rockies. What that means is I partner with private landowners to enhance their habitat for migratory birds in southern Colorado, particularly. We find ways to help fund projects that, like Sarah said, are beneficial for the birds and their lands. I've always had a special place in my heart for a great blue heron. I love that you can find them in the middle of a city, having a good time, living their best life, but you can also find them, far out in a wetland, in the woods, and you always find them next to water.
Excellent. And Jessie.
Hi, my name is Jessie Reese. I'm a habitat coordinator on our stewardship team. And as a habitat coordinator, I work with our team of private lands wildlife biologists. So we have 14 wildlife biologists across the Rocky Mountains and the Great Plains. And I work to help supervise some of those positions. And I do work like finding grant money so that we can hire these biologists to work with private landowners and do habitat conservation work on the ground. And the bird that I most identify with is called the canyon wren. When you first look at them, they're just a little brown bird, but what's really special about them is that they live in really cool places. They love to live on the cliff's edges. So you can find them up in the mountains or in the canyons, and they have a beautiful song. And if you've ever heard their song, you'll never forget it. So I love them because they live in the most beautiful places.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for introducing yourselves and giving us some insight into the bird part of your brain. So for the next several minutes, we're just going to be going through some questions and asking these women about their careers and kind of the path that they've taken to get there. So this first question is going to be for everyone to answer. What is your why? And why is the work that you do so important? And for this one, we're going to start with Stacy.
Awesome. So my why is because I love being outdoors and working with youth, and I love animals. So I'm really lucky that I've been able to combine all of my passions into this job. I feel like it's extremely important to be able to help create a connection between youth and our outdoors. And right now, I'm able to be a part of that. It helps our birds, it helps our lands, it helps us as humans to be able to live more in harmony on this planet. So I feel very lucky and privileged that I can come to a job that allows me to do all the things I love in one.
Beautiful. Emily, what is your why?
My why is because I've never felt more like my most authentic self than when I'm outside doing things that I love and experiencing beautiful places with people who share the same passions. And in this work, I've found so many people who share my same passions and share my enthusiasm for being outside in all these different environments. And I want to see those areas continue to persist so we can all share that with everyone else, with particularly for me, with all of my younger nieces and nephews and my little cousins, because seeing their enthusiasm when they learn a new tree or they learn what an ecosystem type is called is always really exciting and rewarding for me, and to see them become the future conservationists.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know whenever I have a niece and nephew as well. So whenever they get excited about something I'm excited about, it's like, okay, like I know I'm a bird nerd, but there are other people out there and I can convert them to bird nerds too. It's excellent. Jessie, what is your why?
My why is really similar to Stacy's and Emily's. I love to be outside, and I wanted to have a job where I could spend as much time outside as possible instead of sitting inside or being on a computer screen. And for me, I spent a long time doing research and being a scientist. And I realized I also wanted to make a difference to help not just study the birds, but really create habitat for the birds. And so that's why I love doing what I do.
Wonderful. Okay. So our next question, again, everyone is going to have a chance to answer, and we want to know more about how you gotten to where you are now. So kind of describe the path your career has taken, and especially if there were any kind of unexpected twists or turns or obstacles that you had to face. So again, we'll start with Stacy.
Awesome. So yes, it's been a winding, adventurous road that has led me to the position I'm in right now. In college, my major was wildlife biology, so I really thought I was on the track to graduate and get into field work, do research, things like that. However, after my first year of college, I got a job as a horseback riding instructor and a summer camp counselor at an overnight camp in Maine. And that really opened my eyes to the education part of things. Not only was I outside working with animals, but I was able to connect with kiddos from all over and be in a really supportive environment with my fellow counselors. So from there, being in school, getting the science side of things, every summer I would go to camp. When I graduated, unfortunately, the economy was not doing well at all. So I went back to
Mhm.
camp, which I was very grateful for and was able to learn and grow. But from there, I then found the environmental education field. So from those jobs, I was able to start working as a naturalist, as an intern naturalist out at beautiful places in New England and then out in California. Um, and once again, it just really combined my love of the outdoors and nature and animals, specifically birds. I got really into birds during college because I had an amazing professor. Um, and with each job, I just kept getting on more responsibility and wanting to dig deeper and grow and learn more. And that's kind of how I just moved up in those different worlds to where I had enough experience that now I'm the one able to plan and be in charge of summer camps and programming and helping to create and setting those baseline experiences, and then to bring in the staff to create those magical memories and connections with the kids.
Magical indeed. Thank you, Stacy. Emily, how about you?
So my career path really started with a love of watersheds. My first positions when I was an intern um, out in the San Luis Valley, my first internship, I worked with a land trust organization that focused on ensuring that water on private lands was going to be protected in perpetuity forever. Um, from there, I was able to find more jobs in doing lab work at my university. I went to school in Colorado State University, and I had 2 jobs looking at hill slope erosion after a fire. So anytime there's a big fire, you no longer have that vegetation in place to keep the soil there. So after a big fire, I was going out and seeing how much soil was running off after significant rainfalls. And then I ended up doing a snow hydrology, um, some snow hydrology research. So I got to snowshoe into alpines and measure how much snow was going to melt off and how much water we would have. And those experiences were really formative and gave me a really good understanding of what a watershed health looked like. I was lucky enough to then work for the Forest Service. And in that position, I was looking at endangered fish habitat. So that was when I started to take a turn from just looking at, okay, how is the watershed functioning to how does the watershed function for species, for a specific species, and is it healthy for that species? I did that job for 3 years and it was amazing. I was paid to backpack. I was paid to go to some of the most beautiful places that I've ever been in my entire life, and camp for weeks at a time. And after moving on from that position, I saw the opportunity with the Bird Conservancy of the Rockies, and I think what made me a great applicant for this position was that one, I had so much experience with watershed and riparian health, and two, it was also in the community that I grew up in. So that felt like a special opportunity for me to take my love for watershed health and apply it to a species concern like I do with the Bird Conservancy of the Rockies and work in my home.
That's incredible. Yeah, those community connections are so important, and that's so, like you said, it's just so special that you get to do what you love in a place that you love and means so much to you. Thank you. Okay, Jessie, how about you?
Well, I have had a long and winding path to get where I am today. Um, when I was younger, I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grow up. And it's, I kind of still don't know. So it's okay if you don't know yet either. And so when I went off to college, I was undeclared, which means I hadn't decided what to study. And eventually I decided to study biology. I knew I wanted to work with animals, and I thought maybe the way to do that would be to work at a zoo or an aquarium because I didn't know that there were other ways to work with animals. I took a field ornithology course, and ornithology is the study of birds. And so in that class, all we did was drive all over the county looking at birds and learning to identify them. After college, I was still wanting to study marine biology, but I realized that my internship I had after college was in a laboratory, and all I wanted to do was go outside and look at the birds. So I thought, oh, I could do field research. I could go out into the field and count birds and do that kind of thing. But I had no experience doing that at all, so no one would hire me. So instead, I went into the AmeriCorps program. And AmeriCorps is kind of like the Peace Corps, but instead of traveling to a foreign country, you stay in the US. And in AmeriCorps, I spent a year doing environmental education at a zoo. And I really loved that, and I learned a lot. But I still wanted to go do field research, but I still didn't have the right experience. So after AmeriCorps, I took a job at a vet's office, and I worked as a vet tech working with cats and dogs. And then I started volunteering at a bird banding station. And that's where scientists will use special nets to catch birds, and they'll collect information and collect data to study their habits and their migrations. And so through that volunteer work, I finally was able to get a full-time position doing field work. And I did field work for the next 4 or 5 years. And I got to travel all over the country, out west to Yosemite National Park and Oregon and places like Maine and Cape Cod and Puerto Rico. And eventually I decided to go back to graduate school to get a master's degree. And I studied bird migration and mangrove habitat conservation. And I got to do lots of really cool field work in Latin America, down in Colombia and Panama. And after I finished my graduate work, I continued volunteering down in South and Central America for a little while. And then eventually I decided that I should come back and get a real job. And so I took a position doing forest management for bird species in West Virginia. So I had a job really similar to what Emily does now, where I worked with private landowners and I helped them create habitat on their property. And after doing that for a year, I moved out here to Colorado. And eventually, after being out here for a little while, I got a job with Bird Conservancy, my role presently. I got a job here after applying 4 different times to this organization, and I applied on every one of our teams, on the science team, the education team, and finally the stewardship team twice before I got my job now.
Excellent. Yeah, I think it's amazing how, because I think we've all had these kind of twisty, turny paths to get to where we are. And at least for me, when you're in the thick of it, it can be kind of frustrating. You think, like, I'm never going to get to where I want to be. I don't even know where I want to be. But looking back on it, you realize how, it might sound kind of cheesy, but each thing kind of did happen for a reason, and it connected you on this path to be where you are. So that's incredible. Thank you all for sharing your stories. Okay, so this next one is going to be for Emily. And I'm wondering, how important is collaboration in the work that you do? Because I think a lot of times when people think of science, they think of people, maybe in a lab, working by themselves, heads down. And I know for me and people who are maybe a little more social, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but science can be working with a lot of people. So tell us, how important is that to the work that you do?
Collaboration is really the bread and butter of my job. So, to take it back to what my position is, a private lands wildlife biologist, my position is built around partnership and collaboration. I work very closely with an agency, a federal agency, the Natural Resource Conservation Services, and a Colorado state agency, Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And without their support, my position wouldn't really exist. So, my position is created from collaboration. And then from that point, I often work, as I said, with private landowners, and listening to them and partnering with them and taking their concerns seriously helps us get the work done. And oftentimes, even though I have the resources of the Natural Resource Conservation Service, I still need other partners who have insight on specific fish habitat, or insight on a wetland type that I haven't worked on before, or additional funding to help me get the job done. Without reaching out to my partners, I would miss out on learning opportunities and project opportunities. Each time I work with a partner, not only do I get the success of a finished or completed or sometimes flopped project, I also get to form deeper relationships and network with people, with other career professionals. And oftentimes these people become my friends. Um, like I said, they're my mentors, they're my colleagues. Sometimes I get to play the role of a mentor every once in a while. I'm still in the beginning of my career. Um, but it really is the foundation of a private lands wildlife biologist.
That's so interesting, and that's one of my favorite things too. You know, instead of working with mostly adults like you do, Emily, I work mostly with kiddos. But it's just so funny, and I think that the more people that you work with, and you know, the more perspectives that you learn, the bigger that your worldview grows, right? And the more I think better able we're to do our jobs and you know to conserve these habitats and birds. It's incredible. Okay, Emily's going to take this next one as well. So this question can be a tricky one. We don't often like to talk about times that we have failed, right? But you'll notice that in this slide, I have failed in quotation marks because the truth is that sometimes we have to fail in order to learn and grow. So Emily, tell us about a time that you have failed. What happened? What did you learn? How did you move forward?
So when I was an undergrad student, I was a first generation undergrad student. And what that means is that none of my other family had gone to college before. Um, and you know, it's a very different experience leaving your home, starting out in a new city, and trying to adjust to university life. And I definitely struggled. I had always been a good student, and my first couple years as an undergraduate, I was not the student that I would have liked to be. And there were definitely moments of serious doubt and doubt whether or not I should be there. You know, we talk a lot about, um, you know, having to imposter syndrome, which is, you know, saying that, you know, do I really belong here? Is this something that I really should be doing? Um, and I think because of my struggles, it prompted me to reach out to some of my professors and some of my friends, um, who really gave me a lot of insight and encouraged me to move forward despite those, you know, on paper failures, despite not being the student that I had thought that I wanted to be, the straight A student that I had seen myself as. And because of my failure and my willingness to be vulnerable with my mentors, that led to new opportunities, that led to job opportunities, that led to these people being invested in me and helping me see my own potential. And even though it was difficult to feel like I wasn't living up to my own standards, being being honest and vulnerable and reaching out for help was what really helped me turn that around and turn it into an opportunity.
Yeah, I'm so glad you used that word vulnerability, Emily. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that experience. And I think that's so key because especially when you know we have an idea of how we are or how we're supposed to be and we're not meeting that expectation, you know, we can feel really embarrassed or shamed about it. And you know, you're a lot less likely to reach out for help. But the truth of the matter is that everyone has failed at least once, probably multiple times in their lives. And so if we can be brave enough to reach out for help, more likely than not, whoever you're reaching out to, you know, if they're a trusted person that you have a relationship with, they're going to be happy to help you out. If they can't help you out, they'll probably point you in the right direction. Okay. So Jesse is going to take our next question. What is the weirdest and or coolest thing you have ever had to do for your job?
Well, during the time when I was doing field work, I would work these short-term positions that were usually just 3 or 4 months at a time, sometimes even shorter than that. And I would usually have to travel to the different location, and then I would live there for the whole duration of the job. And I got to live in a lot of really wild and cool places. I spent a lot of time living out of my tent, living in a cabin with no electricity or running water. But a couple of my favorite times have been the times that I got to live on islands. And the first time was a fall, and I lived on an island off the coast of Cape Cod, which is in New England, and the island was completely uninhabited. And I lived there with one other person in a little house that was attached to a lighthouse. But the house, it was like they had stopped building it in the middle of the construction. The upstairs had no floors, there was no electricity or running water. And every day we would wake up and our field site was just right outside the front door. And so we would go and we would study the birds right in our front yard every day. And in the afternoons, we would walk across the entire island and survey all the birds. And one of the coolest things was one day I was climbing over the sand dune to access the beach. And as I crested over the sand dune, I saw seals as far as my eye could see. And they had never been there until that day. And it turned out that the seals come there for the winter. And all of a sudden, one day, they just arrived. And then they were there the rest of the time. And the other really cool island I lived on was a very small island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean in the territory of American Samoa. Samoa is an island chain. And so I lived on one of the very remote, smaller outer islands of the chain called Ta'u. And this island was about 10 square miles, and there were about 200 other people who lived there in a couple different towns. And there were some convenience stores where you could buy the necessities, but there were no stores or restaurants or anything like that. And it was really hard to be that remote. I was 5,000 miles away from my family and my friends. And so we did really hard work hiking up the mountains in the dark to get to our field sites before dawn. But it was one of the most beautiful places I lived. And even though it was really hard to be there, I'm so glad I had that experience.
Wow, that is incredible. I'm wondering, what were some things, because you mentioned it was could be really hard, and I could only imagine being that far away from your family in these, worlds that you had never been to before. What were some things that kind of helped you get through that?
Yeah. Well, what really helped was, especially on Ta'u where there were other people, was making friends with some of the local folks who lived on the island. So we had some friends who had a small farm, and we would go visit them, and they would share their bounty from the farm, because it was very difficult to ship all of our food to the island before we got there, enough for 4 months. So we were so grateful to make friends with some of the local folks there who would share us with some fresh veggies.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool. All right, let's see. And then Stacy is going to take this one. Can you tell us about both your favorite part of your job and maybe your least favorite part?
So with the job that I have currently as the Camp and Family Programs Coordinator, I would have to say my favorite part of the job is that I actually get to be out with all of our campers every day. Because our camps are so small and we have such a small staff, it requires me, but it is a requirement I'm very happy to fulfill. I get to work with our littles who are young as 4 years old, and getting them their first pair of binoculars and walking them out to Bar Lake and just kind of seeing and remembering what it's like to discover everything through their eyes. And although you're running around like crazy trying to keep up with them, and you share their excitement, so that's pretty phenomenal. And then on the other end of things, with our campers who are 16 and 17 years old, who are in our overnight programs that are more advanced in birding, and we talk about career opportunities and give them different skill sets. It's amazing to see these young adults and their passion going out into our worlds, whether they become a private wetlands biologist or a coordinator or an educator. It's just something really, really special that I feel very privileged to be a part of, and once again, help facilitate that in order for it to happen. So that's the highlight for sure. The least favorite on the flip side is there's a lot of paperwork. Colorado, we are a licensed childcare facility for our overnight camps. And with that comes lots of paperwork and fine print and reading and making sure every, T is crossed and I is dotted. So staying behind the scenes and doing that paperwork or data and making sure everything is in probably isn't my favorite, but I remind myself that it gets me to the point of having those camps or being able to be out with the kids, which makes it all worth it.
Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you, Stacy. Okay. And everyone's going to get a chance to answer this question. What's some advice that you would give to folks who want to pursue a career like yours? And Stacy, let's go ahead and start with you again.
Okay. I would say one of the biggest things that I learned was to follow your truth. Whatever makes you happy on a day-to-day basis or something that you're super passionate about, follow that. It's not going to be easy. One of the things that I had encountered was definitely some financial struggles, because being in the education world or environmental education or the summer camp world, you don't always get the big bucks. Like, let's say if you were to be like sales or something like that, and to each their own, everyone can get their joy from somewhere. But for me, I just knew that as long as I focused on what made me happy, because we're at our jobs so much, right? Like dawn to dusk sometimes, depending on what season it is. So I would definitely say stay focused, get support, whether it's your family members or friends or mentors, and keep in touch with them, because I know they have helped me out massively with everything in my career and leading up to it. And just keep going. Keep going. And even if you're not sure of where you're going, I could not have told you 10 years ago that I would be in this position, or I would have been able to make a career in the education, conservation, camping industry. So have faith in yourself, get the support of others, and honestly do what makes you happy, what brings you joy.
Words of wisdom. Thank you, Stacy. Emily, how about you?
If I was to give advice to anyone, I would say you are more capable and more qualified than you think you are. There have been so many times where I thought I would be a total long shot for a position or an opportunity, and maybe just applied on a whim. And sometimes it was just even getting to the interview stage, and sometimes it was getting the opportunity. But more often than not, I was pleasantly surprised at how far I made it, and what maybe I was qualified for. So if there's something that you're interested in, that you want to do, reach out to the people who do those things and ask questions and put your name and your face out there, because chances are they can teach you the things that you need to know. If they think that you're passionate and dedicated, they're going to give you a chance. Just don't sell yourself short.
Beautiful. Yes. Jesse, those two are going to be hard to follow up, but what do you think?
Yeah, that's some great advice. I think the biggest thing I have to say is just that there's no right way to do things. It's okay to take a winding path, and it's okay to try something and to realize that actually maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I actually want to try something else. It's okay if you feel like right now you know what you want to do, and then later it's okay to change your minds. That's all fine. And I also think the other important thing is to learn about your comfort zone. When I was younger, I was very shy. and I was very anxious, and I had a very small comfort zone. And the thing that I've learned over the years is that it's important to take small steps to get outside of your comfort zone, but you probably don't want to take giant leaps outside of it. It's important to take small steps so that if you do something that's way outside of your comfort zone, that might be too intense and you might not like that experience, versus taking a very small incremental approach, I think is a good way to think about it.
I love that. That is wonderful advice, Jessie. And I think a lot of people don't think about that, right? They think, oh, I just really have to put myself out there and move to America Samoa right off the bat. And I'm sure that was not your path, right? You did not get from point A to America Samoa, first thing. So incremental steps, that's a great piece of advice. Okay, so we are nearing the end here. And if any of you have any closing thoughts, follow-ups to other questions, anything else that you would like to share, please feel free to do so. Stacy, do you have any last minute thoughts? And if not, that's okay too. We've covered a lot of great stuff here.
Yeah, I just think that it's amazing to take the time to listen. So something like this is so valuable, to just hear what Jessie's experience was and what Emily's experience was, because everyone's is so different. And being able to hear and listen to everyone's stories is something pretty fantastic to be a part of. So hopefully you all can keep doing that. Like we said, find things that you're interested in, ask people, listen to their stories, and see if it ignites a spark in you.
Excellent. Emily, do you have any closing thoughts?
I'll just share what a mentor told me. Don't be afraid to take the hard classes. Don't be afraid to be the only person the only woman out there, the only person of color out there, because we need you. We need your perspective. We need your insight. We need your voice at the table.
Beautiful. Jessie, anything else?
Yeah, kind of like Emily said, I think it's just important to understand that it's okay to be different, whether it's you're younger than everyone else or you're older than everyone else. It's okay to take things at your own pace and at your own time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I also had a mentor say something very similar, because yeah, exactly. When you're thinking, if you're the only woman or the only person of color, the only whatever it might be, it's easy to think, oh my gosh, I don't belong. But if we're looking at this, especially from a conservation aspect, we know that the healthiest ecosystems are really diverse, right? They have a lot of biodiversity, different birds, mammals, plants, everything living there. And the same is true for life in general, right? In any workforce. So the more diversity, biodiversity we have, the better. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. All right. Well, oh my gosh, thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to share your stories with us. Listening to people's journeys and how they've gotten to where they are is definitely one of my favorite things to do. So everyone that's watching, I hope that you enjoyed it as well, and that you gleaned some information that might help move you forward on your journey to finding a career, whatever that might be. So thank you for being here and listening to the stories of these amazing women. We believe that conservation is just such an exciting field, and we make a difference every single day. We also like to think that there's something for everyone, any type of person. So today we heard about 3 different career paths. There are a ton more, just even within Bird Conservancy and within the larger conservation field. So if you're a person, a lot of us, today we talked about how we love being outside and, paperwork and being at the computer. That's not so much what we do like. Maybe you are a computer person. There's a job for you in conservation too, right? So getting to work with data and make maps and graphs and things like that. We talked about collaboration and how a lot of us work with other people. But maybe you're more of, a single team player. That's okay too. There are some positions where it's more of a lone job kind of thing. So no matter who you are, there's a place for you in the field of conservation if that is what your passion is. So as I mentioned, we hope that you enjoyed it. We all would love to answer any questions that you all might have. So feel free to reach out to us. I've listed our emails here. So we would love to hear from you. And then just, like I said, keep in touch with us. If you want to learn more, you can visit our website at birdconservancy.org. We have an events calendar there, so we will do summer camps and bird walks and all sorts of really cool programming. Right now, we're doing it both virtual and some in person, so you can check those things out. You can look on our Facebook page. We post a lot of our events and articles that tell even more about the work we're doing in the field there. We have a YouTube channel where you can watch more really cool webinars that we've done. And lastly, there's another kind of general email address. So thank you all so much for watching. Take care and happy birding.